Welcome on into Card Central 365. He's Ethan Hannaford. I'm Luke Slabaugh. It is Sunday, March 8th, and we're talking Cardinals spring training. 2.5 weeks till opening day when Ethan and I will bring you the post-game show. Ethan, how you feeling on this Sunday night?
Feeling great. There's a lot to be excited about right now when it comes to just baseball in general. The World Baseball Classic has been really fun to watch. I mean, I didn't think that it was going to get better than what we saw in 2023. And the energy from the 2026 World Baseball Classic has just completely destroyed what we saw in 23. So that's been a lot of fun. Plus, you've got some pretty exciting storylines coming out of Card Spring Training Camp in Jupiter, Florida right now, and looking forward to discussing them with you.
And we shall. The show is brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. And we're talking about a helium guy in the Cardinals system. Right-handed hitting outfielder Joshua Baez, Dominican American, turns 23 in June. Two moonshots this weekend. Friday against the Orioles, where he took Albert Suarez deep, 436 feet off the bat. And then yesterday against left-hander Kodai Senga and the New York Mets in a Cardinals loss. That one, 388, the tape measure. Right-handed hitter with some pop. 6 for 18 this spring, those 2 home runs, and the OPS over 1,000. He is rising up the minor leagues. When we talk about a helium guy, his esteem in prospect evaluators and organizations, he's getting some butts. Baseball America has him the number 54 overall prospect. MLB.com has him 87th and the 4th best Cardinals prospect. The Cardinals thought of him so highly in November, they added him to the 40-man roster to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. Big spring breakout. Corner outfield spots open for the Cardinals. Ethan, what do you do with Joshua Baez?
It's a great question. It's a really good question. And I don't know if I have the answer yet, which you're probably thinking, well, then why the heck am I watching this? Well, here's the thing with Joshua Baez that makes him so intriguing is that he is one of the few options within your system that provides the power punch. And in a year like 2026, which the Cardinals aren't expected to compete, it's meant to be the year of the young guns, right? It's where you're meant to figure out what you have in some of these guys. On top of that, there is who do you feel confident in on this 26-man roster hitting more than 20 home runs? Let's say 25. Maybe Ivan Herrera. I think he hit 18 in his 100 games that he was healthy for. So if he repeats and has similar success to what he had in 2025, maybe he's there. Maybe Nolan Gorman has a bounce back. You know, he's going to get the full runway. I know you guys hate that word, but he's going to play every single day at third or DH. So maybe he's the guy that could that could bounce back and hit 25 home runs. The point being is there's not a lot of that. In Joshua Baez, if you weren't convinced enough, has proven over the last couple of days that he certainly has the power punch. He also has the speed to go along with it. There's a lot of reason to want to give him a go in that spot, especially when you look at what the other options are. If Lars Nootbaar was going to be ready to go, Luke, for opening day, I don't think that we're really having this conversation because it's Lars Nootbaar. He has been around for several years now. He is capable. He certainly has had his share of success at the major league level coming off of a disappointing 2025. But if he's healthy, you're probably not talking about Baez the way in which we are now. The reason we're talking about it is because the other options, it feels like at least, that have been talked about for left field are Jose Fermin, Nathan Church, and Thomas Saggese. And no disrespect to any of them. They're all great guys. They don't necessarily provide the excitement punch that Joshua Baez does.
And some of them don't have the acumen of playing a corner outfield spot as well, which is why you saw the Cardinals bring in fringe major league outfielders like Nelson Velasquez into the fold as non-roster invitees.
Yeah.
You may need to plug and play someone at the start of the year. Very valid point. a lot of Cardinals fans, the diehard ones, were in the post-game chats in 2025 talking about this guy playing at Double-A Springfield, a guy who has the speed and power combo that the Cardinals so desperately crave. 20 home runs and 54 stolen bases between High A Peoria and Double-A Springfield. Now, Dozer Park down there in Peoria, where I got my start 12 years ago, love it. Love it, love it, love it. But he also cut his strikeout rate down from 35.6, or excuse me, 35.5 to 20.6. To make a year to year leap like that in this new player development regimen, I think speaks volumes to the cavalry that is coming. Maybe not at the start of 2026, but in 28 and beyond. The fact that you can make such a mental adjustment in 1 year, I think he could be part of this core. And president of baseball ops Chaim Bloom has said as much, that when you're talking about the future Cardinals core, this guy, he projects to be part of it.
The same reason that you didn't bring up JJ Weatherholt at any point in 2025 is, I think, a fair reason as to why you don't do it with Joshua Baez to start off the season, even as tempting as it may be. Now, he could go out and every single time that he starts a game from here on out, he could park one 415 feet into left center, and maybe the Cardinals would change their mind. I would be surprised if they do, though, and the reason being is recency bias. The Cardinals did this not very long ago with a star-studded prospect in Jordan Walker. Very similar situation. Walker had similar in the sense that they both had very good years prior at Double-A. Jordan Walker in 2022 was lights out in Double-A with the Springfield Cardinals, and he had a very strong 2023 spring. It was not a slam dunk that he was going to be starting in right field for St. Louis on opening day against the Blue Jays in 2023. But his spring bat convinced them otherwise. And 2023 was a great season for Walker at the major league level. He had an OPS right around 800. I know that their handling of him was a little bit rickety in the sense that he was back and forth a little bit, and they wanted him to lift the ball, all that mumbo jumbo in the midst of a position change. But then obviously we know what has been the case the past 2 seasons for Jordan Walker at the major league level. You want to make sure that you get this right. They didn't rush JJ Weatherholt for good reason. And Weatherholt, I know, is a different prospect than Baez and Walker were. Played in college. Baez and Walker came out of high school, needed time to develop. Don't rush it. Don't rush it like you did with Jordan Walker. Look what that led to. You have, as you mentioned, the season that he had last year, you have built good track with him as to where he is going. Let him build off of this spring training in AAA Memphis. And then when you trade Lars Nootbaar at the July whatever deadline, or maybe it's earlier than that, then you can go ahead and you can talk about bringing Joshua Baez up. Don't rush it. I know it's tempting right now to salivate when you see the way he swings the bat and the way the ball exits the ballpark the way it has the last couple of days. Don't take the bait. In the long term, I think it'll probably be less than beneficial. You're in no rush for Joshua Baez to have to be up here.
No rush for him to be up here. And you mentioned the swing. The profile kind of feels like a Jorge Soler with speed, perhaps what Teoscar Hernandez has done in LA the past couple of seasons, and that is something that is very encouraging for Cardinals fans. You had mentioned Lars Nootbaar, and this is an aside before we go back to Joshua Baez. He says, I think if Lars Nootbaar were ready for opening day, Chaim Bloom would have likely already traded him to Boston, probably. I do feel like this is a build trade value season for him. Very valid point by Space Magic Storm.
I agree.
We talked about President. Oh, sir, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that I agree. If as I mentioned earlier, if Lars Nootbaar is good to go, you're not talking about Joshua Baez. There is a world in which if Lars Nootbaar doesn't have to get the deformity, what's it called? What was it called? Come on, help me here. What was the surgery he had on his heels? What's it called? Help me.
Haglund's deformities.
Thank you, Haglund's. Like wanted this. That was not what was coming to mind. The
Attention to
Haglund.
detail will help you, Ethan Hannaford, in the KMOX booth.
I know. Just had a
I'm
rough
kidding.
moment there. We'll recover. But if he doesn't have that, there's a good chance in which he isn't here with the Cardinals in 2026. If that were to have happened, does it change the way the Cardinals navigate the offseason? Maybe, probably not. It certainly makes it interesting as to if they would have traded Lars Nootbaar, what would have been their plan in left field this year? Would they have been maybe a little bit more desperate to bring in a right-handed outfield bat? Because we heard Heimblum talk about the desire to do that, but there wasn't much on the market. They didn't end up bringing in anything. I don't know. It kind of makes you think, but I do agree with Space Magic Storm's comment.
Mentioned President of Baseball Ops Chaim Bloom wanting to take time with Joshua Baez, 6'3", 220 right-handed hitter with some pop. And he mentioned it as much in an interview to Tom Ackerman. Hey, you work with him at KMOX. He says, Baez has some pop. Quote, we know we need that both short-term and long-term. He's going to have every chance to be part of that core. We just got to make sure we aren't selling short that journey and making sure we don't skip steps. An allusion to Jordan Walker. And one thing that Walker at 20 years old had, and something that Joshua Baez has, is that cool confidence. When Jim Hayes and I met Jordan Walker at winter warm-up in 2023, he was the coolest dude. And the first thing, he shook everyone's hand, was very direct and approachable. And when he left the room, Jim turns to me and he goes, that's a potential face of the franchise. Like that guy he looks the part. He carried himself like the part. Life gets in the way sometimes and things happen. And when someone struggles after succeeding for the first 20 years of their life hitting a baseball, you can imagine that the road starts to squiggle a little bit. And with Joshua Baez, he's still yet to hit that road bump. I mean, we mentioned striking out 35% of the time in 2024. There's still struggles to be had. He had an interview the other day with Joey Schneider at Fox 2 and saying that he sees himself as a 30-30 guy in the big leagues. Clearly, confidence will not be an issue.
I would I would push back and argue that he has faced that road bump. This is a guy that was drafted in the third round, second round. My stats won't freaking load for me. This is ridiculous. But this is a guy that was drafted in the early rounds in 2021. So he and was almost a forgotten prospect because of just how terrible it was for him at the minor league level. Round 2 pick in 2021. I'm looking back through his numbers here in rookie ball in 2021. Given a small sample size, he batted 158. In 2022, he batted 237 in rookie ball for 12 games, 286 in single A ball, 218 in 2023 in 91 games in single A. 2024 slowly started to turn in the right direction where he finally got it going at single A. But at this point, he had been in single A for almost 3 seasons. I mean, like I said, almost a forgotten prospect. So this is a guy in that sense, I think, that has gone through the struggle. Even when he got to high A in 2024, he hit 225 in 71 games with a 694 OPS. So little bit of a different situation than Jordan Walker in that sense specifically. The hope, right, is that that's going to be able to benefit him. Obviously, struggling at the major league level is a whole new ball game of struggling because the lights are brighter than they ever have been. The attention is greater. There's far more eyes that are on you. Let's hope that Joshua Baez is able to take this long road in the minors that he's had over the last several years, filled with struggle, especially in those early years, and he is able to be better for it once he hits what is the biggest level of adversity, and that's challenges at the major league level and adjusting to just that top tier of pitching.
And all it takes is going from one tier to the next, having those breakout split seasons at Peoria and then Springfield, and next up is Memphis. A bunch of Cardinals option the other day to Memphis as well. We'll get into that in a second. Something about those two outfielders, Walker and Baez, being drafted in back-to-back years. Walker, a first rounder, and Baez, a second rounder in 2021. The pandemic really messed up player evaluations and development for those two first round classes in particular. You'd be hard pressed to find a prospect who had a smooth ascent coming out smelling like roses after being drafted in the first round in 2020 or 2021. When I think to that 2020 class, which Walker was a part of in the first round,
Mhm.
maybe Garrett Crochet, but even then, he had Tommy John surgery a couple seasons in, started out as a reliever. PCA with the Cubs was not good his first taste of the major leagues. He was a project at the major league level. And in 2021, Jackson Merrill, it's probably the one that sticks out. Jordan Westberg in 2020 as well. But some of those top draft picks really got the short end of the stick. And so for players like Baez and Walker to still have the faith and goodwill of their organizations and have a chance to prove themselves this year, I think speaks volumes. And this spring training sample size is just another chapter in that.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. They certainly have had their bumps along the way. I know that Walker has been working on some stuff the last couple of days on the backfield. The backfield's just trying to continue to figure out this swing. I believe Marmol yesterday or this morning said feels like he's in a good spot right now. So there's a lot of wait and see for the Cardinals right now, and 2026 is going to be very telling. Boy, you hope it works. You hope it works for Jordan Walker. You hope it works for Joshua Baez, certainly for them, but also, I mean, how quickly would this rebuild process be able to fast forward double speed, triple speed if Jordan Walker is able to be at least who he was in 2023? If Nolan Gorman is able to turn back into that 27 to 30 home run guy that he was in 2023. If Joshua Baez is able to come in, let's assume second half of the season, and looks really good and comfortable on top of Mason Wynn and the growth that he has made the last couple of seasons, Alec Burleson's Silver Slugger year, as well, and on top of Ivan Herrera and what he was able to do in 100 games last year. Obviously, that is a very optimistic point of view. A lot of things would have to gel and work in order for that to happen. But there is a world in which we are looking at this team. Guys are taking those next steps in their careers, and all of a sudden, you're thinking to yourself, they're really not that far at all. Guys are going to continue to develop in the minor league levels and are slowly going to make their way up. That pitching that we have been hearing so much about this offseason is you're going to start seeing it at the major league level probably this season. And all of a sudden you blink and the Cardinals are right back in the mix of things. That's not the craziest thing in the world to be said. It starts with guys like Jordan Walker and Joshua Baez especially Jordan Walker is a little bit of a different spot than Joshua Baez, obviously, in the sense that he's been here for a few years, but it starts with guys like him.
It does start with guys like him. Cardinals made a move the other day, demoting a number of interesting names to AAA Memphis. Right-hander Tink Hence, longtime favorite of this show. Cesar Prieto, the infielder. Outfielder Brian Torres, who had a good year of contact last year. Catcher Leonardo Bernal. And catcher Jimmy Crooks, who got his first taste of big league ball at the tail end of the 2025 campaign. Kind of clears out the catching glut that the Cardinals had. They were not going to carry 4 catchers on opening day. It seems like it will be Pedro Pajes, Joel Pozo, and or Ivan Herrera to start 2026.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. This really surprised me. I did a double take when I saw Jimmy Crooks' name on this, and the reason being is that I don't know if I was cemented that the Cardinals were going to carry 3 catchers in 2026. They did for pretty much all of 2025. And then part of the reason was because of the limbo that you were in with Ivan Herrera early in the year. But then even when Herrera was back and not catching at the end of the year, then Jimmy Crooks came up, Joel Pozo kind of was your bench guy, DH on the occasion, could catch if needed. Cardinals catching's in a really weird spot right now because you know what's coming, but it's not quite here. I'm not really sure how to feel about this. I love Joel Pozo. I love what he provides. If the Cardinals have 3 catchers on their opening day roster and Jimmy Crooks isn't one of them, then I'm going to be very confused. And I imagine that the organizational response would be to that we don't feel that Crooks is quite there yet. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's silly of me to assume that. If that is the case, what exactly is the plan going to be for the development of Jimmy Crooks and Leonardo Bernal, 2 of your 3 top catching prospects, both top 7 organizational prospects? Bernal is a top 100 prospect, according to the MLB pipeline. What is your plan for how you are going to balance out the development of those 2 players with AAA Memphis? That doesn't make sense to me. This feels like a year where you kind of have to figure out what Jimmy Crooks is. That isn't to say that you aren't still going to be able to do that just because he doesn't make the opening day roster. But I do find it very interesting that there's a world in which Jimmy Crooks, Leonardo Bernal, and Joel Pozo are all in AAA to start off the year. I'm not saying it's going to be that necessarily. It's just a little bit of a head scratcher to me. I know that Pozo is a great clubhouse guy, and he had a good 2025. He lost 33 pounds this offseason. He looks like he's in really good shape. So that's great. But I don't know. Jimmy Crooks is your 7th overall prospect in your organization. At some point, you got to figure out what you have in him. Otherwise, you're going to miss the window because eventually Bernal's going to be ready. Eventually, Raniel Rodriguez is going to be ready. And then Jimmy Crooks is going to be a name of the past.
There's 2 potential starting catchers at AAA Memphis right now. Could it possibly be damage control? Going into 2026, you know what the floor is with Pedro Pages and Joel Pozo. And in the vein of Lars Nootbaar, if there is a sell-off at the deadline, you will have a known commodity on the trade market. And at that point in late July, could be a time for one of those younger catchers to take over the reins.
At that point, you have to compare value. And this is a very similar, that's a great question because that is the exact conversation we were having in 2025 regarding Eric Fedde and Michael McGreevy. Could the potential value that you could get from an Eric Fedde be enough to where it justifies a former first round pick not getting opportunity at the major league level, getting repetition in a season that was dedicated to runway? The reason that was a little bit different, I would argue, and maybe even a little bit more justified, is because if Eric Fedde wouldn't have had the insane fall off that he did, you probably could have gotten something. If he would have kept at the pace that he was at the end of 24 and even the start of 25, you probably could have gotten something pretty solid for him at the deadline because starting pitching goes for ridiculous return at the trade deadline. Joel Pozo, no disrespect to Joel Pozo, Joel Pozo is not going to get you anything at the trade deadline. Not anything that is going to compare to the value of giving a young prospect repetition and opportunity. Pozo, to me, seems like a great guy to keep in AAA and to be a mentor to some of these young catchers. He's done it at the major league level. He's not a veteran by any means whatsoever, but a good, controlled piece, I think, that could be a good guide to some of those young guys. Maybe that's silly to say because he's played it at the major league level so little. But when you compare the value of what could you get for a Pedro Pages or a Joel Pozo at the trade deadline compared to this is the year to figure out what you have in Jimmy Crooks, I argue that Jimmy Crooks and his value is way higher than what Pedro Pages and Joel Pozo is and what you could get at the deadline for them.
It's an interesting hypothetical there. Final thoughts as we wrap up this show on Joshua Baez, clearly one of the latest Cardinals spring training heroes, 6 for 18 so far this spring.
Left field is going to be very interesting. Does it end up being Joshua Baez? I'd lean towards no right now, but there's a world in which let me ask, maybe this is my rhetorical question I leave with you. Is there a world where he does enough to force the St. Louis Cardinals hand into being the opening day left fielder? That is rhetorical question number one. Rhetorical question number two is, what is Jimmy Crooks' role on the 2026 St. Louis Cardinals look like? My biggest, most fascinating piece this entire offseason has been how do they navigate their catching fiasco right now? And we didn't even mention, a lot of it probably has to do with what Ivan Herrera's role is this year and how much he's actually going to catch. A lot of questions. We're going to continue to hopefully find out more as these games continue to move forward. What are we? We're less than 3 weeks away from opening day. So answers are going to be figured out very quickly here in the next couple of weeks, Luke.
Couple weeks, you got to fit all the puzzle pieces together. Shout out to Joel Pozo. I got to drop 33 pounds before opening day. There's still an avenue in which that happens. I feel that Herrera runway may be cut short if knee and soft tissue injury remain a consistent issue this season as well. So Crooks should come up as a result. Listen, the troops are waiting at Memphis. That's the final thought. Like, this rebuild is not going to be 5 years of pain and misery.
Nope.
They're going to get guys up there sooner rather than later. It's the case with Joshua Baez, the case with Jimmy Crooks, Leo Bernal. Maybe those guys just got to hit better in AAA. Give them some good reps. Make sure they're playing every day. That's my final thought. St. Louis Blues drop the puck at Anaheim at 8 o'clock. I'll be around for Blues Central post game. This has been Card Central 365 on STL Sports Central. Ethan Hannaford, I love you, man. Thanks for doing this with me.
Much love, brother.
This show is brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. Have a good night, everyone.